And if one does what God does enough times, one will become as God is.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're counting down our picks for films that you might not realize continue or tie into existing stories.
Shop smart. Shop S-Smart. You got that?
Number 20, Be Cool.
Don't laugh. You see, you're a movie guy, so you don't know. But the music business goes in cycles.
Fans of Get Shorty may be surprised to learn that the 2005 film Be Cool is a veiled sequel to the 1995 gangster comedy that starred John Travolta and Danny DeVito. In fact, both movies are based on Elmore Leonard novels, which were released almost a decade apart. In Be Cool, Travolta and DeVito reprised their Get Shorty roles, with mobster Chili Palmer transitioning from Hollywood film production to a career in gangster rap. Critically panned, Be Cool hasn't had the same shelf life as its predecessor, with fans and critics citing boring dialogue and a lackluster plot, among other complaints.
But what about speed?
No, Mark. If you're important, people will wait.
Number 19. This is 40.
Let me see.
No, I'm not gonna let you see.
You're not gonna let me see because you're not taking a poop.
I've been flushing as I go.
Considered a sort of sequel to the 2007 film Knocked Up, This is 40 focuses on two supporting characters from the aforementioned flick, with no mention of the previous film's protagonists or plot. Both Paul Rudd and Leslie Mann return to play married couple Pete and Debbie, with the plot focusing on the many responsibilities and challenges the husband and wife face as business owners and parents on the cusp of turning 40 years old. While neither Seth Rogen nor Katherine Heigl of Knocked Up make an appearance, both films are written and directed by Judd Apatow, with the director's own daughters portraying Paul and Debbie's kids.
Sadie, 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 Sadie,
Charlotte?
Sadie.
I'm doing my homework.
Number 18, Graffiti Bridge.
You can't fight fire with fire. When a man screams, you must learn to whisper.
A standalone sequel to the 1984 film Purple Rain, Graffiti Bridge sees the character The Kid, played by Prince, returning for a whole new chapter. Set a few years after the events of Purple Rain, the Kid is now part owner of a nightclub willed to him by the character of Billy from the first film, but must contend with rival Morris Day and his group The Time, who also return. Promoted as the must-see sequel to Purple Rain, Graffiti Bridge was despised upon its release, which is likely a big part of the reason the film itself has been forgotten.
It's really nice.
On the outside, it's very nice. It's the inside I got a problem with.
Number 17, Queen of the Dam.
Humans are animals, brute creatures. Their destruction can only make sense.
You probably know the 1994 film Interview with the Vampire, starring Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. But did you know that movie had a sequel? The 2002 film Queen of the Damned is technically a continuation of Vampire's plot, with both movies being adaptation of author Anne Rice's series, The Vampire Chronicles. Queen of the Damned spends much of its runtime exploring the ancient origins of the fanged characters, with many of the roles from Interview being recast, including lead vamp Lestat. The movie met with scathing reviews that described it as campy and muddled. The tragic death before the movie's release of Aaliyah, playing the titular queen, was another shadow over the troubled adaptation.
See, my children, remember your real family.
Number 16, Star Trek.
You know, I couldn't believe it when the bartender told me who you are.
I'm like Captain Pike.
Your father's son.
When director J.J. Abrams announced his cinematic reimagining of the Star Trek universe, series diehards responded with a range of reactions. What no one was expecting was a clever tie-in to the original Star Trek TV series that would mark the film as a spiritual sequel of sorts. This occurs toward the end of the movie when a marooned Captain Kirk, played by Chris Pine, has an encounter with an older version of Spock, with Leonard Nimoy returning as the famous Vulcan. It's a shocking reveal that feels right at home with the film's sci-fi themes. Nimoy's appearance helped make the movie feel truly Star Trek.
Look, I don't know you.
I am Spock.
Number 15, Split.
This is like that crazy guy in the wheelchair that they put away 15 years ago. I think
They gave him a funny name, too. What was it?
Mr. Glass.
Director M. Night Shyamalan is no stranger to delivering third-act twists, but the filmmaker went the extra mile at the end of his 2016 film Split. In a pre-credits scene that shows several characters discussing the Beast, played by James McAvoy, a waitress makes a mention of a similar evildoer locked up years before. In a left-field shock, David Dunn, played by Bruce Willis, tells the waitress the criminal's name is Mr. Glass. Dunn was the protagonist of M. Night's 2000 film Unbreakable, thereby making Split a sequel and second entry in the Unbreakable series. The 2019 film Glass would bookend the trilogy.
The man people in this city have been talking about. The only person to survive that train wreck all those years ago.
Number 14. 21 Jump Street.
Fortunately for you two, we're reviving a canceled undercover police program from the 80s and revamping it for modern times. You see, the guys in charge of this stuff lack creativity and are completely out of ideas.
Here's another great example of a cinematic adaptation unexpectedly paying homage to its TV roots. Toward the end of the film, buddy cops Morton and Greg, played by Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum, are in a heated standoff with a vicious biker gang. But it just so happens that two of the gang members are actually Tom Hansen and Doug Penhall in disguise. Both Johnny Depp and Peter DeLuise reprise their iconic roles from the 21 Jump Street TV series. While Hansen and Penhall don't fare too well in the movie, the appearance of both characters makes the 2012 film a years later sequel to the TV show.
We know what it's like being undercover. Metro Police Jump Street Division.
Yeah. Come on, you guys are Jump Street?
Yeah.
That's funny because we were actually Jump Street.
Number 13. 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Please. Please, just let me go, please.
There's nowhere to go, Michelle.
A 2008 found footage film, Cloverfield would re-spark interest in giant monster movies. But not until 2016's 10 Cloverfield Lane did fans of the original get a direct sequel. The movie follows Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character Mary, who wakes up in an underground bunker with John Goodman's Howard and John Gallagher Jr.'s Emmett. A key part of the story is Howard and Emmett's insistence that the world outside has been rendered uninhabitable. Mary eventually discovers that the Earth has indeed been transformed, and in a way that makes 10 Cloverfield Lane a spiritual sequel to the 2008 original.
He drove me off the road, and he dragged me here. So whatever he's telling you about the air, some big attack, the purpose of this shelter is a lie.
Number 12. My Summer Story, aka It Runs in the Family.
Ralph! Downstairs in 2 minutes!
Since it came out over a decade after A Christmas Story, MGM initially decided to call this sequel It Runs in the Family in order to distance it from the holiday classic.
How about you, Ralphie?
Who, me? Yeah, Ralphie!
However, after becoming a huge financial disaster, MGM retitled the home video release My Summer Story.
Isn't the worm gonna drown?
No, worms are good swimmers. Go get them, Tadpole.
Following the further adventures of young Ralphie Parker, this sequel had all the main actors recast, apart from Gene Shepard as the narrator and Teddy Moore as Ralphie's teacher.
Ralph, I'd like to see you for a few minutes during lunch. I want to discuss your book report.
Although A Christmas Story 2 was released in 2012, further erasing My Summer Story from the public's memory, neither film was able to resonate with critics or audiences like the original. Number 11. The Chronicles of Riddick.
I'm just passing through.
A sleeper hit in 2000, Pitch Black had the early makings of a cult classic. This action-packed sci-fi horror hybrid put Vin Diesel on the map, leading to his roles in blockbusters like The Fast and the Furious and Triple X. Given Diesel's newfound superstar status, it made sense to make Riddick the title character of this Pitch Black sequel.
It's gonna be one speed. Mine. If you can't keep up, don't step up. You'll just die.
It didn't hurt that Riddick was the most interesting character in the movie, not to mention the biggest badass. With its larger budget and kick-ass leading man, this sci-fi adventure flick whetted our appetites for more interplanetary mercenary chases. Even in complete darkness, Riddick steals the spotlight.
It's an animal thing.
Number 10. Patriot Games.
Just pissed me off. I couldn't just stand there and watch him shoot those people right in front of me.
Before Tom Clancy was known for video games, his popularity soared thanks to his series of novels featuring Jack Ryan. This CIA analyst has appeared in 5 thrilling action flicks so far. Since 4 different actors have portrayed him, you probably never realized these movies were at all related.
How are you gonna get away, huh? You wanna go for the other knee? Come on!
Jack Ryan was first portrayed by Alec Baldwin in The Hunt for Red October, but the character wasn't heavily prominent in the marketing for that film. Thus, nobody seemed to notice when Harrison Ford was recast as Ryan in the 1992 sequel, Patriot Games, which was so critically and commercially successful that a follow-up with Ford came out 2 years later.
If I go down, you're going with me.
But with that being Ford's last time in the role, it's safe to say Ryan is a man of many faces.
I am telling you, I want back in.
Number 9. The Jewel of the Nile.
Jack is dead.
Don't be ridiculous. Jack would never die without telling me.
Before Robert Zemeckis thrilled the world with his Back to the Future series, he proved his worth with the adventure comedy Romancing the Stone.
My minimum price for taking a stranded woman to a telephone is $400.
Will you take $375 in traveler's checks?
The story of a romance novelist who gets involved with kidnapping plots, treasure hunts, and dashing smugglers became a huge award-winning success.
What'd you do? Wake up this morning and say, today, I'm gonna ruin a man's life?
Rushed sequels were not that common in the 80s, but thrilling adventure films had become a dime a dozen thanks to a little movie called Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I hate snakes, Doc! I hate them!
Although the main cast of Romancing the Stone all returned to the big screen a little over a year later, and The Jewel of the Nile did find some box office success, critics were less than pleased with the sequel's plot holes, and talk of a follow-up to that eventually fell through.
That was great!
Right, huh? I could have got him killed!
Number 8. The Two Jakes.
I wouldn't extort a nickel from my worst enemy. That's where I draw the line.
Believe it or not, there is actually a sequel to Roman Polanski's Chinatown, and it's called The Two Jakes.
Well, I was accusing you of murder, Mr. Berman.
Call me Jake.
In addition to directing, Jack Nicholson reprises his role as an older detective, Jake Gittes.
You can't trust a guy who's never lost anything.
Although the film actually received fairly decent reviews, mainstream audiences were confused by the title, which seemingly had no connection to its predecessor. On top of that, many film buffs felt that a follow-up to Chinatown simply didn't need to exist.
Got a nasty reputation, Mr. Gibbs. I like that.
As a result, The Two Jakes tanked at the box office, and a third film titled Gittes vs. Gittes never saw the light of day. That's not a joke.
What I do for a living may not be very reputable, but I am.
Number 7. The Devil's Rejects.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
After Rob Zombie's directorial debut, House of a Thousand Corpses developed an instant cult following among horror fans, so a follow-up was expected.
Get on your feet. Come on, let's go.
Please, mister, this is insane.
Zombie clearly loves horror, and his first project was a love letter to ghoulish and gory 70s grindhouse classics, such as The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Devil's Rejects follows the first film's family of murderous maniacs. Now on the run for their heinous deeds, the style considerably shifts, as we now find ourselves in a kind of The Hills Have Eyes road trip nightmare, with a Bonnie and Clyde criminals on the run scenario.
Well, I'm Miss Bonnie Parker, and this here's Mr. Clyde Barrow. We rob banks.
Although both films are now beloved cult classics, not everyone realized they were witnessing the same psycho family on screen, especially since Zombie likes working with the same actors for his various projects. Number 6. The Road Warrior, aka Mad Max 2.
It's been a pleasure doing business with you, but I'm leaving.
Though it's now considered one of the greatest action movies of all time, audiences weren't to blame for not knowing The Road Warrior was a sequel to Mad Max.
I'm scared, Thief. You know why? That red circus out there. I'm beginning to enjoy.
While the first film was making its rounds at the time and slowly gaining cult status, the apocalyptic road revenge movie had not fully reached American shores until 1981, at which point Mel Gibson was still an unknown Australian actor.
2 days ago, I saw a vehicle that had hauled that tanker.
You want to get out of here? You talk to me.
Originally titled Mad Max 2, the sequel was retitled The Road Warrior for North American release. Fortunately, a prologue that featured footage from the first movie was included at the beginning of the film, so poor moviegoers unfamiliar with Max Rokitansky wouldn't be confused.
On the roads, it was a white-line nightmare. Only those mobile enough to scavenge, brutal enough to pillage, would survive.
Number 5. U.S. Marshals.
The great Sam Gerard.
Yes, I am.
And you always have to win.
Yes, I do.
1993's action thriller The Fugitive, starring Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones, is an acclaimed classic. But a lot of people don't realize that there's a sequel. Tommy Lee Jones reprised his role as United States Deputy Marshal Sam Gerard in U.S. Marshals. The movie references Harrison's fugitive character Richard Kimball, although he doesn't appear. Of course, both films are really cinematic reworkings of the 1960s Fugitive TV series. Unfortunately, U.S. Marshals received mixed reviews, with most considering it an unworthy sequel, which helps explain its relative obscurity.
Keep that in your suit unless I tell you to take it out. Get yourself a Glock. Lose that nickel-plated sissy pistol.
Number 4. The Color of Money.
Money won is twice as sweet as money earned.
Although The Hustler was a classic of 60s cinema, young moviegoers in the 80s likely flocked to see The Color of Money because it starred Tom Cruise. In the film, Cruise plays a young pool hustler and the protege of an aging Paul Newman. Newman reprises his role as Fast Eddie, who's now older and looking for an apprentice to take under his wing.
You gotta have two things to win. You gotta have brains and you gotta have balls. And you got too much of one and not enough of the other.
The 1986 drama was a big success, finally earning Newman his first Academy Award. Unless you were over the age of 25 at the time, though, chances are you had no clue these two films were connected, or that the first one even existed. With that contrast being even stronger due to the fact that the first was black and white and the second was in color.
Well, the balls roll funny for everybody. I told you that.
Number 3. Desperado.
Carolina, did I thank you? I will.
In the case of Robert Rodriguez and his big screen sophomore effort Desperado, audiences were unaware the surprise hit was a sequel due in part to the change in language.
It's easier to pull the trigger than play guitar. Easier to destroy than to create.
Both films follow the nameless mariachi and his run-ins with drug gangs. But El Mariachi was entirely filmed in Mexico and in Spanish by the American-born Rodriguez, with a barely there budget. But even so, it became an indie film legend.
Ese día al amanecer era un día como cualquier otro. Sin amor, sin suerte, sin aventón. Nada cambia.
The sequel, however, had a major studio budget and Antonio Banderas' rising star power. Therefore, the original title of El Pistolero was changed at the studio's request.
Bless me, Father, for I have just killed quite a few men.
Even the final installment in Rodriguez's Mexico trilogy, Once Upon a Time in Mexico, was released with many audience members unaware of its connection to the previous films.
Who are you guys? Sons of Mexico, sir.
Number 2. Army of Darkness.
Hail to the king, baby.
Horror fans were anxiously awaiting the return of Ash in one of the most anticipated sequels of the 90s, especially with the bizarro ending of Evil Dead 2. Since Ash would be flung to the 14th century to fight the undead, a bigger budget was needed. Therefore, the third film had major studio backing, thanks to the underground success of the Evil Dead films.
I got a bone to pick with you. Come on.
Sam Raimi's initial title of The Medieval Dead was refused, as was Evil Dead 3: Army of Darkness.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. See this? This is my boomstick!
At the behest of Universal Pictures, the film was released simply as Army of Darkness, in order to allow the film to stand on its own, making fanboys scratch their heads, though its positive critical reception and cult status prove that they still hail to the king, baby.
Buckle up, bonehead, because you're going for a ride.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. The Silence of the Lambs.
I know that I'm not smarter than you. Then how did you catch me? You had disadvantages. What disadvantages? You're insane.
Anthony Hopkins delivered an iconic performance as Hannibal Lecter in 1991's Academy Award-winning film, The Silence of the Lambs. But he wasn't the first to tackle the role. Lecter was first portrayed by Brian Cox in the 1986 film Manhunter. Based on the Thomas Harris novel Red Dragon, Lecter appears as an incarcerated murderer who assists FBI profiler Will Graham in tracking down a criminal known as the Tooth Fairy Killer. While both films were praised for their impressive acting, excellent direction, and compelling scripts, Silence of the Lambs garnered the bigger critical acclaim of the two pictures. What other films were you surprised to learn were actually sequels? Let us know down in the comments.
Well, Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming?
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.